this message this evening, that you would speak your word, that we would hear your word. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, it's good to be back. We are in Genesis 22, if you want to turn there. Sorry, 23. We are coming to the end of an era. Sarah has passed away, and we're talking about her death and burial. And Sarah was a matriarch of the faith that you are a part of. Sarah was the mother of the faith that you partake in when you show up at the church here. And so she is to be respected, and as well as Abraham. But when we look at their life, we see a life that was, like I've been saying, a hillbilly saga. There was some really crazy times. There was some really good times. There was times they were faithful. There was times they were not. But at the end, God says that they were the authors of our faith, or they were the father and mother of our faith. So therefore, what we can do is we can look at their life and we can actually we can glean from it. Is there a problem? Okay. All right. We can glean from it and see that though we are not perfect people, that we can still walk with God without being perfect people. God does not save perfect people. He perfects the people that He has saved. We take on His righteousness. We don't become righteous to know Him, but instead we know Him, and through knowing Him, we receive His righteousness. And I think that if we were to hear from Sarah today, that she would tell us something very similar, that there was parts of their lives that if they could have changed them, if they could go back, they would have done them differently. And the whole point of coming together here is to be a family and to bring truth and to guide each other. And that is not determined by a constant, but as the world changes, as our needs, our wants, our desires, as things change, the word doesn't change. However, what we talk about changes. And today we're going to be talking about marriage. And the reason is because marriage is something that is extremely important when it comes to the church, when it comes to us collectively as a body. Marriage is very important, and Jeffrey, you need to listen, okay? It's very important because it is going to determine the future not only of this church, but of your family, okay? Your family, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and so on and so forth are going to benefit from you hearing this message and applying this message. And if we as a church can grow our marriages, then what we are going to do is leave a legacy individually with what we leave behind. And as Sarah leaves, she leaves a son behind. And that son has a son, and so on and so forth, all the way down to Jesus, who saves all of us and brings all of us together here today. And so this is the lineage, and this is a very powerful woman, and we can learn a lot from them. It says, Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. There's a day of your wedding, and there's a day where you're going to bury your spouse. There's a day when it's going to be the last day of your marriage. It's going to be Eddie? Yes, we all hope that. We all do. One day is going to be the last day of your marriage. And, I venture to say that the first day of your marriage, which is your wedding day, is very important. Right, ladies? It's very important. But the last day is equally as important, if not more important. And we see the response that Abraham gives to her death. says, and Abraham rose from before his dead and said to the Hittites, I am a sojourner and a foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. The Hittites answered, Abraham, hear us, my Lord. You are a prince of God. Look at the respect among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land. And he said to them, if you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place. Now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, for all who went in at the gate of the city. No, my Lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, but if you will hear me, I give the price of the field, accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, my Lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field throughout its whole area, was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites before all who went in at the gate of the city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. So his wife dies, and Abraham goes to find a burial place. Now, the promised land was promised to Abraham that it was going to come. Sarah dies in the promised land. However, Abraham did not possess the promised land, but he was a sojourner in the promised land. He was staying there temporarily. He was moved there by God to become a seed that he might one day his people, his children's grandchildren and grandchildren are going to possess the land in which he was living among the Hittites and the Canaanites. And so as she dies, he buys a plot of land, and I think this is just beautiful. He is following the promise of God, and he says, you know what, I'm not going to go back where I came from to be buried, but I'm going to, out of faith, I'm going to bury my wife, and myself will be buried where God promised that my family is going to live for the rest of time on earth, that God's people are going to live there. And so he and his wife become the seed that is planted. Literally, their bodies become the seed of faith that is planted in this land, in the foreign land. I think that's just beautiful. But greater than that, we see Abraham, who's mourning the death of his wife that he loves very, very much. And he goes out, he buys a plot of land, and, you know, just going back a little bit, one of the things I see with Abraham is a man who left a legacy, that we still talk about today. And one of the things that I was thinking about is when it comes to legacy, leaving a legacy, every man has it in his heart. Every single man sitting here has in his heart that they want to leave a legacy, that they want to be significant. They want to leave a legacy for their family, that 4 generations from now, they talk about what you did and who you were. I think every man in here has that kind of longing that is like, I want my great, 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 great grandchildren to know that they were related to me. I want that significance to be there. You know, in my life, I don't know. I never met my grandfather. Have no idea who his father was. I don't know anything about my grandfathers. I don't know anything about them on either side. I mean, I know a little bit about my grandpas on each side, but I don't know their fathers and their fathers. And to leave a legacy is to leave something here, but the problem is that we have become an exceedingly nearsighted people. And we've become so nearsighted that our phone spends hours right here. And this is as far as we get in our thoughts. And our thoughts don't go out and beyond that. But we, as men, have a longing for that. And if we can put our phones down and we can start thinking and actually processing things, we'll process it through that longing, and we ourselves will start making some decisions to leave a legacy. Today, my son was, I asked him to pull some weeds. He was not pleased at all. At all. He was, in fact, very upset, along with my daughter, who was also upset. And Keegan comes to me and he complains and he says, "Why do I have to pull these weeds?" I said, "Because I asked you to." He said, "Well, why do I have to?" And I said, "Listen," I said, one day this property right here is going to be given to you. One day my plan is to give this property to you, okay? And I said, I want you to go out there and I want you to pull those weeds as if though you are going to own this place someday. I said, you don't want me to hand this place over to you looking like crap. I said, you don't want your property looking like garbage. I said, put some pride into what you're doing. I said, and unless you can take care of this property, I'm not handing it over. I'm not going to hand it over. But I got to thinking, I'm like, the decisions that I make on that piece of property are all decisions for generations to come. They're not decisions for the end of my life, because the end of Sarah's life is really not the end of her life. We're still talking about her. It was not the end of Sarah. Sarah's legacy lived on, and it will live on for eternity. And I got to thinking, when I built my house, I built a structure out of concrete for a very simple reason. Wood was about 15% cheaper to use pine 2x4s that are untreated, which a wolf could huff and puff and blow my house in, okay? And as I built it, I literally used concrete for this simple reason. Because I thought, I want to build a beautiful house that 4-5 generations from now is still going to belong to my family, and they are going to live in the exact same house that I built. Okay? I am hoping, long, far, and beyond my grave, I will meet some of my great-great-great-great-grandchildren that will say, thank you for building that house. Thank you for giving us a place to live. I grew up in it, and I have so many fond memories of it. I want people to say, I want my great-great-grandchildren to say, yeah, 300 years ago, our great-great-grandfather built this. That, you see, if we continue the way of the world, we continue to narrow our perspective. We continue to bring everything right in front of our face instead of thinking about what is going to come. And if we do not prepare for generations that are going to come after us, then we really don't have love in our hearts. Then we really don't have love in our hearts. There's something so beautiful about a building that's 600 years old. There's something so amazing about a building that you stand there and you look at it and they tell you it's 600 years old and you think, imagine all the people that lived in this. Just imagine everything that happened in this home. And I thought, to have a perspective that is not temporal, it just blows my mind that we build homes so crappy. Like, they will not last 2 generations. It is not possible. It really isn't, not without rebuilding the whole entire house. But what happens is our focus has become so self-centered that we are no longer thinking about what is going to come. And God tells us to have an eternal mindset. And I would say with an eternal mindset also just comes a mindset that lasts far beyond your life, far beyond your years. Your entire life is, your decision making is going to change when you start thinking eternally. It's amazing when you watch a person who is thinking 80 years versus a person who thinks eternally. There's a stark contrast to those two people. A person who thinks, well, I'm going to be here for 80 years, so let me set myself up for success. Let me set myself up. A person who has an eternal mindset says, let me set up my kids. Let me set up their kids. Let me do everything I can in my part to make sure that the generations after me will not live in poverty. You see, we know poverty is a mindset, and you're passing your mindset on to your kids. You're going to pass your mindset on to your kids. And you walk around and you say things like, we can't afford that. We can't afford that. We're going to get to that a little bit later. And you say things like that are so damning to your children. And they go into a marriage and they say, no, we can't afford that. We can't afford that. And you bring your corrupt mentality into their life instead of having an eternal mindset. The investments that you make with an eternal mindset, you're like, you know what? I don't care if I don't build a house until I'm 80. It's still worthwhile building. It's still something that I can hand over to my children, right? But if you have a tiny mindset, what happens is you say, you know what? I'll settle. I'll just settle. Let me just go buy this tiny little house. Let me just go buy this small little house and go in debt to the point where I'll never be able to actually build what I want. You see the difference? There's a massive difference there. And it's important that we as a church understand this because you are setting up the next generation. You're teeing life up for them. You're teeing it up for them. And we see that with Abraham, God said, I'm going to give you children like the sand of the sea, of the beaches on the sea. And he says, if you could count the sand on the sea, that's what the generations after you is going to look like. And he went with it. And he went with it. Don't tell me you have love in your heart if you don't care, if you're not investing in the next generation. Right? Abraham has this eternal mindset, but Abraham has something else that is beautiful. Abraham loves his wife. Abraham truly loves his wife, and I want to talk about that. He goes and he buys her a burial plot. He goes and buys a burial plot for her, and he pays 400 shekels of silver. And it was 1,000 years later, that the Israelites paid 50 shekels of silver to build the temple. He paid something like 5 times more for her burial ground than they paid for the ground that the temple was built on. You see, money was not really an object. In today's value, the burial land that he bought, he paid something over $600,000 for it to bury his wife. Because he loved her. Because he deeply, deeply cared for her. That plot you can go visit, once the war is over. That plot, there's a synagogue there, and in half the synagogue, people of Israel meet, in the other half, Muslims meet. Just an interesting tidbit. And below it lay Abraham and Sarah, and Jacob and, it's Isaac and Jacob, as well as their wives, are all there. It's the patriarch's burial ground, and they're all buried there. And so you can still to this day go visit this place in Hebron. But he goes above and beyond at the end of her life, and he says, this is the last dignified thing I can do for my wife. But what concerns me is that we wait too long. We wait until there is a death before we start saying something good about our wives, before we start making her feel special, before we start mourning all the things we should have done. And there's a lot of young people in here, and I want you to know something. You're not always going to be young. When you get old, you're going to look back and say, this happened really, really quick. It happened so quickly. And what I don't want is for you to look back and have regrets. I don't want you to have regrets about how you treated your spouse and your children when you get old. But instead, I want you to be down on the floor crying when your wife dies. Crying because you are going to miss her so much because of the real, true love you actually had for each other. And if we're going to do that, we're going to have to actually start changing our mindset about how we look at our wife, how we look at the one in which we are going to marry or the one that we did marry. We're going to have to change our perspective, and part of that is to have an eternal perspective so that we can love not because of what I get from her today or tomorrow, but because God has put her into my life and I'm called to love her, and I want to make life worth living. And one of the things that happens is that we become so cheap that we try to get a deal on burial plots. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, you could actually get a deal on a burial plot. And how good do you feel about that? How good would Abraham have felt if he wouldn't have paid for that lot? He wouldn't have felt good at all. Instead, he would have had this, his grandchildren would have said, man, Grandpa was cheap. Grandpa was cheap. He wouldn't even pay for the lot. And now it still belongs to Ephron. Grandma's buried on Ephron's land. And today, you can actually go get a deal on a lot, on a burial place in a graveyard. You know that? You can get a 2-for-1, right? I'm just saying, some of us are so cheap when it comes to our wife, it's incredible. We're so cheap. The way that we associate not only with our wife, but our children and our friends and our family. We become so cheap that we literally, when it's time to buy a burial plot, we are actually looking for a deal. And I want you to think about that because, you can grasp that that's just dumb. But can you grasp that the way you're treating the people around you now, You're trying to be frugal in the way that you bless them. Right? You're trying to be frugal in the way that you deal with your wife. It's like, no, we can't buy that right now. No, we're not doing this right now. No, we don't have the money right now. Right? And there's all these excuses as to why you men, and I'm talking to you men, why you refuse to be the blessing to your wife. You see, blessing and curse actually comes down from us men. Women are looking to us men, our children are looking to us men to set the standard, to set the standard of what they're going to live with the rest of their life. And the way they look at life, the way they look at God is going to come from how you look at life and how you look at God. And this kind of generosity, to pay that kind of money to honor your wife, why can't we not start honoring the people in our lives now so that when they die, we don't have to have this kind of feeling of regret? And instead you have a feeling of, I love that woman as much as I could for as long as I could. I did everything that I could to make her feel loved. This is really important, church, because if we don't get this, we are going to ruin our children. And you're going to have a poverty mindset, and you're going to pass that on to your children. Yeah, this idea that we are too broke. We are too, I'm speaking from experience on the things I've done wrong, and I'm speaking on experience from the things I've done right. Don't wait to spoil your wife. Don't wait. Don't wait. Take her on that vacation, right? Make her feel special, because she is. Let her buy the dress, right? Pay the extra money for the ring. Take her out to that fancy dinner. Just do it. Why? You say, but I don't have the money. I just don't have. Listen, there's something I have such a problem with. You say, I don't have the money to treat my wife and children well. That is a load of shit. 110%. And here's why. Because God I don't remember when He has said no to me when it comes to me blessing my wife. I don't remember Him saying, no, I don't want you to do that. I do remember times when I was being selfish in it, and what I was giving was actually for me, for what I get in return. I remember those things. Those weren't actually very fulfilling. But praying for something that my wife wants that I can bless her with, let me just say, most of the time, it's a yes. It's a yes. Because we were designed as men to do that, to care for our women and to care for our children. And this one time, we had 2 cars. We were very broke. We didn't have money. We had 2 cars, and I really wanted to take her on a vacation. I really wanted to. And I sold one of our 2 cars so that we could go on a vacation. And we literally didn't have money. I'm praying. I'm like, God, please, give us enough money where I can take her. Just please give me enough money. And it comes down to it, and he's like, well, sell the car. I'm like, what? We have 2 people and 2 cars. I don't want. Listen, I have never, ever, ever, ever regretted doing that. Never, not once have I regretted selling my car to take my wife on vacation. I haven't. Never have I regretted it. I guarantee you, every financial advisor in the book would tell you that is a bad idea, that is a horrible idea. Well, listen, I'm tired, and I'm sick and tired of churches trying to teach people financial freedom. I'm sick and tired of it. What they're trying to teach you is, here, we don't want to teach you how to be in control of your finances. We want to teach you how to pull finances out of God's hands and into your hands, and now you are in control. It is dumb. It is horrible. It is not godly. It is not godly to make your family suffer and not have a good life until you are financially free. That is not godly. Okay? I know. There is no other church preaching this. There is no financial advisor preaching this. I don't care. When you start praying and you say, Lord, my wife wants this, can you please make this happen? Can you please make so that we can do this? I'm telling you, there's a lot of yeses. There's a lot of times the Lord will answer yes. More times than you think. But one thing you got to be very careful of is that you don't become greedy and you take what the Lord gives to you to bless your wife and children and you hoard it and you say, oh no, we need to make our payments and we need to pay all this stuff so that we can be financially free. It is a trap set by the devil. Because here's how it works. Okay, we're going to pay off everything and then we're going to have a great retirement. So you're going to make your wife and children suffer so that you can have 10 glorious years when you're out of your prime. Congrats. You're going to sit there and think, what the hell? What did I do? What did I do? We're so old we don't even feel like doing anything. We don't even feel like going on a vacation anymore. What? Now we're going to go buy a vacation home in Florida and go there and just die off. That's not financial freedom, that's hell. Because when you get old, what you're going to care about is the legacy you leave. You're going to care about your grandchildren. You're going to care about watching them grow up and going to their football games and going to their matches. That's what you're going to care about. Because you're just done with yourself. You're like, man, there's nothing really for me to blow this money on except for my grandkids. Right? And that's what you're going to end up doing, if you have any love in your heart at that point. And my point is, today was given to you to live. Now live today, don't wait until you're 70. Don't wait until you're 70. It doesn't make any dang sense. It doesn't make a lick of sense. While life is still good, live. And God says, and Paul says, or James, I should say, says, you don't have because you don't ask. You ask and you spend it all on your own passions. You know what that means? That means you are not being taken care of you're not taking care of your wife financially because you're greedy. You're not taking care of the people around you. You're not loving on the people around you because you're greedy. You want everything for yourself. Listen, it is blessing and curse does come down from us men. It also comes down upon us men from God. Do you understand what I'm saying? What do I mean by that? I mean that if you are not going to bless the people that God has given you influence over in your life, don't expect Him to bless you. And it's like, well, Lord, I need this, and I need the 69 Mustang, and I need a Mach 1, and I need this, and I need that, and I need this. And your wife comes in and says, hey, I would like to go buy a new dress. And you're like, no, we don't have money. And then you wonder why God doesn't answer your prayers. You wonder why God doesn't answer your prayers because you don't answer the prayers of the people praying to you. You're not grateful enough for them in your life that you're willing to bless them. You know what a prayer is? It is simply asking for something, right? It is simply making that connection. Your wife walks in and prays and asks, right? Pray tell, asks you, can I go buy this dress? And the answer is absolutely not. I don't have enough money. I'm saving up for a Mach 1. That's what you're thinking in your mind, but you're not going to tell her that. You know, and you can't figure out why you never can actually get your life off the ground, why you can't build a legacy, because you're not willing to bless. Instead, when you don't bless, you stop the blessing of God flowing in your own life. You stop it in your own life. And you can't figure out why you can't get blessed. And it's like God says, I put these people in your life for you to take care of, and by what measure you give, you will receive. What measure you give to your wife and kids, you will receive from me. You ever think of that? You know, you want God to be a yes God. Yes, absolutely, I will answer your prayer, and I'll give you that Mach 1. You want God to be a yes God, but you are a no God to everybody around you. That makes no sense. You're going to get what you put out there. How you bless the people around you is the blessing that's going to flow through you. This is not a sermon about how to get what you want. This is a sermon about you blessing the people in your life. This is a sermon about you loving the person that God has put in your life. God put this person in your life because he wanted and desired to bless you and you to bless her. Okay? And God desired that blessing to flow through you to her. But you continually say no, 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 no. Let's just finish paying off the house and I'll buy you the new car. Let's just do that. 30 years from now, you got a 30-year freaking loan. You're going to take it down to 20 years. For the next 20 years, we're going to have a shit life because I'm a tightwad. Right? Listen, this works even when you're broke. This works, in fact, it works best when you're broke. So don't tell me, well, I just don't have enough money. Don't tell me that. It actually works better when you're broke. We're going to hear a little story after I'm done, and you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear how God provides. You know, as a man, when my wife is crying because she can't have what she wants, what am I going to do? Am I going to tell her to shut up and grow up, or am I going to go to God and cry for her? Huh? You see? We are foolish men because all we see is right here. We can't see past it. We can't see the big picture. You know, it's like, yeah, does God really want us to spoil our wife? Let me throw it out like this. Any of you have a daughter, understand something very clearly. God encodes in a man to spoil the living mess out of your daughters. For any of you as daughters, you understand exactly what I'm saying. You know, I love my son to death, but I'm going to spoil my daughter 10 times more. There's something about a man that wants to spoil his daughter. It's encoded in us. And what we are doing when we do that is we're setting her husband up for failure. And I don't care. I really don't care. I'm setting a standard in which she can live by. And her husband should provide for her and take care of her and watch over her and bless her. That's his job. You see, God calls us the bride. And he says, I want you to love your wife as Christ loved the church. Let me tell you something. The blessings that God has poured out on you, and you're not willing to pass that on to your wife, what he has done for you and you know, saved you from addiction, saved you from mental illness, saved you from all kinds of situations, and you can't pass that on? You can't pass on his love? And he says, love your wife as I love the church. Listen, God is looking for someone to bless. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. He started the nation of Israel to have a people that he can spoil. And you know what? They were a horrible people who only complained and whined all the time. And so he grafted us in and he said, you know what? Let me spoil them. And then you know what we do? We turn around and become just like the Israelites. And we complain and we whine and we say, oh God, why don't you ever bless us? And why don't you take care of us? And why don't you? And it's like, you know what? He's already tried that. What he's looking for is a person who believes that he's big enough to bless you. And here's a story that I thought was just absolutely amazing about Alexander the Great. Not sure who that is, but he sounds great. So the story is told that Alexander the Great had a general who approached him after many years of service to ask him if he would pay for the wedding of his daughter. Alexander agreed and told him to obtain the funds needed from the treasurer. Soon, therefore, the treasurer came to Alexander, complaining that his general was taking advantage of Alexander's generosity. He was asking for an exorbitant amount of money, enough to host the largest wedding Greece has ever seen. Alexander thought about the situation for a moment, then waved his hand dismissively and said, "Grant him his request in full." The treasurer looked bewildered. Alexander continued, "My general pays me 2 compliments. He believes that I am rich enough to afford his request and that I am generous enough to grant it. In assuming these 2 things, he honors me." You don't honor God by being a cheapskate. You don't honor God by withholding blessing from other people. There's no honor in that. You know, we all agree God can do anything and God is so... Yeah, you really believe that? I can't tell in your finances, huh? Right? God can do anything. Yeah. But no, I'm going to withhold blessing from you and you. I'm not going to bless you. No, God can do anything. You really don't believe it. You really don't believe it. Like I said, this is not about having money or not having money, because this works better when you're broke, because then you have to really actually lean on God. And what Alexander says is, this dude's complimenting me. He asked for $1 million for a wedding. He thinks I'm rich. I like it. I actually like that. It's a compliment. You know what? And he thinks I'm a generous person. That's exactly God's sentiment towards us. You know? You think, oh, I'll just go get my little paycheck and I'll just go home and I'll tithe and I'm going to follow the Dave Ramsey protocol. Right? I'm going to put all these money in envelopes and God can't touch it, my wife can't touch it, nobody can touch it, and I'm going to be very careful that I spend all my money to get myself out of debt. And it's like, you're missing the whole freaking point. You're missing the whole point. Yeah, somebody once told me, he said, you know, when I went into ministry, I went and bought myself an RV, and it was the dumbest money I ever spent, hands down. He said, that thing cost me so much money, but it was the best investment I ever made. He said, my family and I, we jumped in that thing, and we just drove. And he said, we had the time of our lives in that RV. He said, it was an absolute horrible investment financially. But when it comes to what I left with my kids in that RV, it was the best investment I ever made. You see that? Get your mind off your freaking bank account. You know, sometimes I think us men, we just sort of feel like, we're falling out of love with our wives. And I'll hand you over to Cornell for that. Love is a choice, right? She says that sometimes. But she gets a little more sassy about it than I do. Listen, love is a choice. Love is actually, it's an action. You know, the thing is, these warm and fuzzy feelings, you know, and my wife, I'm just not in love with her anymore. Like, we don't connect like we used to. Love is an action. Take action. Take action towards loving her. And watch how the feelings actually follow. Your feelings will follow. Feelings don't lead, they follow. So take some steps into loving your family. And what you're going to find is, wow, I'm investing time into them. I'm investing money into them. I'm investing in them. And I love them so much more than I did. I'm falling in love with my family again. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. That's what real investment is about. So don't give me that crap about we're just not connected. It's your fault if you're not connected. Do something about it. Do something. Don't wait on her to die so that you can sit by her deathbed and tell her how special she is. Tell her every day. Live every day as if it was the last, because you know what? It could be. Make her feel special. I always say a good man loves his woman pretty. It's the truth. Continue to love her. It'll make her flourish. All right? Yeah, my prayer is that my wife will go about 40 minutes before me. You know, that way I can take care of her my entire life and get 40 minutes of silence. It would be nice, you know. No, but really it is my prayer that I can outlive her just for a moment, just so I can take care of her entire life. I don't want to miss a thing. I don't want to miss one opportunity to take care of her. I sure as heck don't want somebody else taking care of her. That's my job. And I take it serious. And I will do what I can to make sure that happens. Of course, death is a little bit out of our hands at times. But I will do what I can to make that happen. You know, we spend a lot of time bickering and fighting and holding resentments and bitterness towards each other in our relationships. And there's going to be a time when you regret not letting go of the foolish little things. So, I'm going to conclude here. And what I'm about to say, I will not apologize for. Some of you might be offended, is my hope. It will give me great pleasure to know that you will change. So you do understand, men, that your wife and your children are looking to you to set the standard of living in their life. Blessing and curse are handed down from you. Do not take this lightly. The standard that you set is the standard your daughters will expect from their husbands, and the same standard that your sons will set for their wives. Look, God is not broke in answering prayers to bless others in our life. Too often we men become the stopgap of blessing to the people in our lives because we are greedy and afraid. And do not give selfish gifts. God will not be manipulated. By what measure you give, you will receive. This explains why many men are broke, because they refuse to be the vessel of blessing to their wives and children. Likewise, women, I haven't picked on you tonight, so I want you to listen real careful, okay? Take it all in. You're not off the hook. There are many men who are trying to leave a legacy, who are with great effort trying to love you, but you continually shut them down with everything they bring to you. You say things like, "We are not doing this," or I think that is a dumb idea. Or even more courteously, you say, "That is not smart." Do not expect much from your husband if this is what you do. Don't expect him to be romantic or spontaneous. Do not expect your marriage to grow. You say yes, but how can I trust him? He has dumb ideas. Yes, he is learning what works and what doesn't, and you are called to help him walk through those dumb ideas that perhaps God himself put in his mind for you and your family for generations to come. When you say no without praying about it first, just let me be very clear. Your pleasure stops right there. And there is very clear reason for that. And that is because you refuse to let him be a man and expect him to still receive the luxuries and byproducts of a man being a man. Just understand, ladies, that if your man is not the man when you are carrying his nuts in your purse. Oh, on the contrary, you are the man. Either repent or go please yourself. You like that? Yeah, I did too. I really did. Yeah. Listen, we only have so long on this earth. And there would be something so beautiful about being buried beside your spouse, and when Christ comes back, being raised with your spouse. Hand in hand, you go through life. Hand in hand, you walk into the doors of heaven. That's what I desire. And I hope it's what you desire. Put all the frivolous crap to the side and get serious about loving each other. Because one day, like Abraham, one of you will be before a casket, laying on the floor crying, either tears of regret or tears of love. And I pray and I hope it's love. Because nothing else is worth anything. Amen? I'm going to have Prayer come up and share a story that has been so dear to me. He says at one point, I don't share this story much because people don't believe it. And I say, well, people are idiots. You still share it and you see what happens. Oh, you didn't know about this, Cornell? This is nice. This is nice. But in any case, Prayer's going to share a story with us that is, man, just moved me. So, listen up or die.
Hello. On? On? Yeah? Can you guys hear me? Yeah, I can hear myself. Robert Frost, the famous poet, has this little poem, and if I'm quoting it correctly, it says, "Two roads diverged in the wood. I took the one less traveled by, and it made all the difference." I'm going to tell you a story, well, live happening. I was in London, and I was walking in the woods. It was a beautiful day. It was autumn colors were out there. The reds, you know, those reds and the golds and the beautiful greens. And I was struggling with God. And I literally took the road less traveled by. And I was on the Queen's land. You can tell because there's a big ditch on those lands. And I was walking on a very nice little road. And I was struggling with God because I needed Him to help me make a decision. You see, I'd gone back to London because I had a job there. I was the assistant psychologist at the Loddon School for Autistic Children. And it was a very nice job, and I loved my job, and I loved the kids, and I was very well paid. And they liked me, and they loved me, and it was a good space for me. But there was a problem, you see. I also loved my wife. And she was back in Cape Town, South Africa, a 12-hour flight away, other side of the world. And I missed her. And I'd gotten the job back in London, but I just couldn't settle in. And I needed some assurance, some help to make that decision. Do I stay in London so far away from my wife? Just for the money? Just take care of her? She couldn't come over. Her mother needed her. She was not doing well. So I had to make that decision. What do I do? What do I do, God? And I was walking down that road, and I talked to God, you know. I said, Lord, you've got to show me what to do. I can't make this decision. I'm too emotional, to be honest. And a voice in my head said, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Why don't you just walk into the woods? Well, Lord, firstly, there's some wire there, and it's like barbed wire. Well, I guess I can get over that. So I walked into the woods and climbed over the barbed wire, went through the Queen's Ditch and up the other side and carried on walking. It had just been raining, so everything was a little bit wet, right? And I got to a little hill, and I said, well, Lord, very nice walk in the forest. I appreciate it. I feel much better. Good oxygen, all that healthy stuff, but I didn't see the point. And the voice in my head said, walk up the hill. It's not a cool hill. It's not, it's not a mountain. But okay, so I walked to the top of the hill. I was like an Israelite complaining all the way. And then I got to the top of the hill. It's a beautiful view, Lord. Thank you very much. I don't think you understand what's going on here. Okay? I see all these leaves, and maybe this is your idea. My wife needs clothing, not fig leaves. You know, she needs pretty stuff. Now, in all honesty, my wife does love pretty clothes and things, but you know, she would never ask me for anything like that. But I mean, I wanted to provide for her. I wanted to be able to give her all the best. And so maybe I should take the job because, you know, she's not going to be wearing fig leaves, Lord. She may look good in them, right? But not a good idea. And I heard a voice in my head say, go down the hill. Now I'm starting to think I've got to walk all the way back. So anyhow, I walked down the hill. I got to the bottom of the hill and I thought, Lord, I don't even see fig leaves that look like clothing out here. What are you doing? You know, you're leading me up this little path. It's not even a path. There's no path, Lord. I'm just like walking through the woods. And he said, well, just keep on walking. And I was like, felt like an Israelite. I'm like, Lord, seriously. Okay, so I walked through and I came to a little glen in the woods. And as I said, it was raining. But in front of me was all this clothing. And it was beautiful clothing. It was like boots that were fashionable and things in boxes, not secondhand. Everything was new packaged. And, you know, I'm from South Africa, so looking around, how the heck did this clothing get here? There's no road. There's not even like prints for boots. The grass isn't bent. The packages are dry. It's just been raining. Oh, it's a miracle. These clothes are God's way of saying the following. Not you, you dumb human, but me. I will take care of you, and I'll take care of your wife. There was even a bag. It was weird. I put all the clothes in a bag, went up the hill, down the road, right back to Loddon, the school I was working at. I said, guys, I'm sorry. I'm going home. Because I believe that God will take care of my family, not me. The burden's not mine. It's really God's. And I tell you what, I've been married to my beautiful wife for 34 years, and I've yet to see, and I watch every day, and she's always beautifully dressed. And those of you who know that's true. And I tell you what, it's not me. I think God just keeps on blessing us and taking care of us. And sometimes we just don't see that, you know. So thank you for your attention.
How many of you think that possibly Prayer doesn't like sharing that story because he actually stole the clothes, created the story, which is a great story. I love that story. It's just God being God. God just actually answering the prayer of a man who really desires to care for his woman. Because that's what God does. That's what he wants to do for you. So let it happen. Thank you for sharing that. Listen, if God is willing to bless Cornell, we're all in the clear. We are all good. So that concludes our service. I think we'll just finish with that. Okay, thank you guys. I must repent after those words.